Hi there, it's Jenna from scribblinggrace.com. Today I have a Bible Journal with Me video that is based off of a tutorial that I did actually almost exactly a year ago on painting watercolor leaves. And so this one is super similar. The only major difference is that I am, instead of using multiple colors like I did in my original post, this time I'm going to use just one color to paint a bunch of different leaves so that you can see the difference of them, and it just creates a really fun and pretty page. So I'm just going to be using this orange color for my entire page. The original blog post on watercolor leaves that I did that a year ago is still up on the blog, and it includes a free printable that has a traceable of a bunch of different leaf shapes. So if you've never painted leaves before and you're not really sure where to begin, definitely go to that post and download that free printable, and that way you can just trace the leaves so that you don't have to freehand them like I'm going to do for this page here. So that link to that blog post and all things that you need to know for this page to do anything similar to this, all the supplies that I'm using, all that stuff will all be in the blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/monochrome leaves. So to start off with this this page here, I just applied a very light base coat onto my Bible journaling page. So I used a lot of water and just picked up a tiny bit of my pigment, just enough that I can see the difference from the cream background page to this now slightly orange background page. And now as I'm painting my leaves, I'm picking up a slightly more of the pigment, so that way it stands out from the background. The biggest thing that I think is the takeaway from this page is how you can create such a really cool and different type of painting, and you can show different elements. So each of my leaves is going to be a different amount of saturation, so they're all going to stand out and look a little bit different. So you can create such cool things just by using the same color and just switching up the amount of water to pigment ratio that you're using. So this is also one of those tutorials that I think is so great if you are especially new to watercolor and you haven't really played around with the saturation before. This is one of those great techniques to try, and you definitely don't need to do it in your journaling Bible like I am. You could definitely just do this on a separate sheet of paper and just use it as a practice type of thing. So try it out by painting different leaves or flowers or any element, and use the same color and just switch up the amount of water that you're using or the amount of pigment that you're picking up, so that you can see and get a hang of creating different saturations and different tones or vibrancies, but still using the same watercolor, because that's one of the biggest techniques to watercolor. So as I'm creating these leaves, I'm starting off with my biggest leaf shape first. And so this one is pretty simple. I just started off by using the tip of my paintbrush to draw out a line, my center line, and then I'm just using my brush to draw some leaf shapes going out from that line. I am applying pressure and releasing pressure to create a wider middle and a tip of those leaves, of each little leaf shape, I guess. But it's definitely, that's something you don't need to worry about if you're a beginner. Just use that tip of your paintbrush and draw out the shape that you want. So now I'm moving on to this second leaf shape, and I'm moving to the smaller shape. So I start off with my biggest shape and my lightest color of pigment. So I just picked up a lot of water and a slight amount of the pigment, but still a little bit more pigment than that background. And now I'm moving on to the second one. So it's a smaller leaf shape than my first one, and I'm picking up a little bit more pigment this time too. So I'm going to be doing 3 leaf shape total. Again, just drawing out that center line with the tip of my paintbrush, and then creating the leaf shapes by applying pressure, releasing that pressure to create that tip, and then doing that again on the other side. So for me, these leaf shapes are all about playing around the pressure of the brush. But again, you can totally just use that printable that I mentioned and just trace the leaf shapes. This is something like applying the pressure to create the shapes is something that can take some practice. So some people can get a hang of it right away, but some people just need some practice. This is the same leaf shape that I've been practicing for years. So definitely don't think that I was a pro at it right away. And again, this tutorial is totally like all about practicing techniques. So I would encourage you to give it a try and see if you can create the same type of shapes. And I'm having this at real time right now so that hopefully you can see this visual on how to do it and be able to create it yourself. I feel like I'm having a little bit harder time describing this video today, but I hope that you understand what I mean. So a couple of things I want to point out also is that I did not prep my page with anything. I don't use gesso. I just paint directly on my Bible journaling page. I'm using my Kuretake Ganzai watercolor set. And this is just one orange color out of that set of 36. And I'm also using just a small round paintbrush. This is just some cheapo round paintbrush from Walmart that came in a giant pack. So nothing fancy, nothing super special. And I also just want to point out that no, I do not have any bleed through issues with this watercolor set or any of the pens that I'm going to use. You can see that I already underlined the verse that I'm working on, and I used a Micron pen to do that, and then I can easily paint over it without it smearing or bleeding or anything like that because those Micron pens are waterproof. So again, all of the links to all the supplies I'm using will all be in that blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/monochrome leaves. And so as you can see, I'm adding my third leaf shape, my third and final leaf shape, and this time I picked up slightly more pigment again than that second leaf shape. So it's the darkest, most saturated leaf shape of the three. And you definitely could change up the way you do this. If you want to start with the most saturated and go to the less saturated, you want to start with the smallest and go to the biggest. I personally find creating floral pages or earthy pages that starting with the biggest element first works a little bit easier. So I always start with my biggest sleeve and then go to the second smallest and then the smallest, if that makes sense. You'll also see me using my heat gun right now to dry my page faster. This heat gun is one of my favorite tools ever just because it helps me to create Bible journaling pages super duper quickly without having to wait for it to dry all the time. You essentially could use a hair dryer in the same way, but I do find that the heat gun just works way better than a hair dryer. It doesn't push around any of the watercolor, and it gets hotter, so it works a little bit faster. I decided to add in one more of those lighter big leaves to finish filling in my page. I felt like there was a little bit of an empty spot, so that's something to keep in mind as well. You can always go back and add other elements. So there's no rules. You don't have to just follow anything that I'm saying. You can do your own thing and have fun with it. So that's it for my leaf shapes. To just kind of add a little extra oomph and a little extra character, I decided to add a little bit of splatter. And so I'm just taking a flat brush that has pretty sturdy bristles, getting it really nice and saturated. So just a little bit of water and a ton of that pigment, and I'm just using my finger to flick some speckles all over my page. This is one of those things that I love to do for a page just to add a little bit of extra detail. It's one of those little tiny things that don't make a huge difference to your page, but it can ultimately really just kind of finish it up. So I added that little speckle, and now I'm going to go ahead and just dry my page and add the lettering, and that's it. So the verse that I am working on today is 1 John 4, verse 16 through 19, which is kind of a chunk, so I'm going to do my best to read it all in one go. It says, "So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. By this is love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment. Because he is, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. We love because he first loved us." So I am using my Tombow Funosuke brush pen to hand letter "We love because he first loved us." So I used a pencil to mark out the general gist of where my lettering is going to go, and now I'm just using that brush pen to create the lettering. If you have been watching some of my videos, you know that I have tutorials on how to do brush calligraphy and faux calligraphy and other hand lettering tutorials, and all of those fun things, everything that you need to create this page will all be linked in that blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/monochrome leaves, and that link will be in the description below. So I'm just going to erase my pencil marks, and then I'm going to use my Uniball Signo gel pen to add a little bit of highlight to my lettering. It's one of those little details that you can't really tell too much, especially in this video, the difference that it makes, but it does just add a little oomph to the page, just like adding the speckles, you know, where I flicked the watercolor onto the page. It just kind of adds a little extra something something. So that's it for my page. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, I would encourage you to try this even if it's not in your Bible, just as an art project, a way to practice, because really the only way that we can get better is by practicing. So I would just encourage you to give it a try. You can try learning different leaf shapes, and you can try figuring out the different saturations of colors just by using water and a different amount of the watercolor. And I will show you the back side of my page. Again, there's no bleed through with the supplies that I use, and all those supplies will be in that blog post. Alright, that's it for my page. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. All right, I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless.